Hi, I'm Granny, and we're going down the rabbit hole of Plate Tectonics Episode 3. Have you ever heard of the Ring of Fire? Is it something you put on your fingers? Is it from the Lord of the Rings? In today's episode, we will discover what the Ring of Fire is. First, we need to understand our Earth and its many layers. The Earth's crust is composed of two types, chemical composition and mechanical. The chemical layer includes 93 elements. By weight, it is mostly oxygen going down to silicon, aluminum, iron, calcium, potassium, sodium, and the smallest amount is magnesium. The chemical layer includes the crust, mantle, and core. The mechanical layer has 5 parts. The lithosphere is the top part, including where we live and the oceans and continents. The asthenosphere is what the continental plates rests on. It is composed of magma, which is constantly moving because of convection. Now, we talked about currents in the water and how those currents bring from the ocean floor up to the surface nutrients for plant and animal life. Well, air currents also goes through that convection mode. In the last episode, we learned that Alfred van Wegener and his brother pioneered the use of weather balloons to track air masses, which involves convection. Hot air rises, cold air falls. Cold air has more density to it. Magma does the same thing. It rises as it is heated. When it cools down, it becomes denser, falling, creating the convection motion. We'll learn more about that in just a minute. The mesosphere is also referred to as the lower mantle, is more rigid and in comparison to the asthenosphere. The outer core is fluid layer of mostly iron and nickel. It is about 1,400 miles beneath the Earth's surface to a depth of 3,200 feet. Here's what I was referring to just a second ago. The temperature is 4,500 degrees hot. The inner core is a hot, dense ball of mostly iron. It is about 758 miles across, and the temperature is 5,200 degrees. So when we're understanding magma and how it's involved with the convection, the closer it gets to the outer core and inner core, the hotter it gets, which then motivates that convection process. Now that we understand that the structure of the Earth has so much movement underneath, we can understand now what's going on the surface, that there is so much movement because of what's going on underneath. What is referred to as the modern day tectonics theory explains 3 types of tectonic boundaries where one tectonic plate meets with another. The number one, not necessarily the number one, is a convergent boundary, which is when 2 plates come together moving towards each other, which then creates more volcanoes and earthquakes, but also mountains. An example is the Indian plate is moving north, the Asian plate is moving south, creating the Himalayan mountains. Another kind of convergent boundary is when one plate is pushed under another one. The older plates are generally have less density to it, so it's pushed under a younger, heavier plate. We'll see more about that in a little bit. Number 2 is transform boundaries, is when one plate is moving in a direction that the next plate is moving in the opposite direction. We see that with the San Andreas Fault. It's an example of this kind of transform boundary, and which is why there are so many earthquakes in San Francisco Los Angeles, and all kinds of areas throughout California and surrounding area. So the Pacific plate is moving northwest, and the North America plate is moving south, which is part of the Ring of Fire. 3. Divergent boundaries is the last type. It is when two plates pull apart, allowing magma to fill in the gap that then hardens. This often happens in the ocean, and the most famous is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in the Atlantic Ocean. There are also pictures of the East African Great Rift Valley, which goes from Lebanon to Mozambique. And there's lots of crazy pictures about this. It's really interesting. Eventually, much of the east coast of Africa will be separating from most of Africa, creating a sea between them. So, anyway, I lived in Santa Monica, California when the 1971 Silmar earthquake hit, and it's also known as the San Fernando earthquake. It hit on February 9th, 1971 at 6:01 a.m. The earthquake was a magnitude of 6.6. The epicenter was located in the San Gabriel Mountains, about 8.7 miles north of San Fernando, at a depth of 7 miles, which is huge. The earthquake was felt over approximately 80,000 square miles of California, Nevada, and Arizona. What woke me up that morning was a moaning sound the earth was making. It was so eerie. And I had nightmares about that sound for a long time, and it really is hard to describe. Once that woke me up, then I could hear this vibrating, rumbling sound getting closer and closer and closer to me. And then it hit, and it was ear-shattering, it was violent, everything shook, things fell off the walls, doors moved. It was crazy. I jumped out of bed, and as I was noticing that noise was continuing south, so the vibration, you could hear it come, hit you, and then continue off. Think of dropping a pebble in water. Well, that was what happened in the surrounding area of that earthquake. It was just crazy. So when I jumped out of bed and ran into the living room, outside was a swimming pool through sliding doors. Well, it looked like a giant was moving it around, and you could see 2-foot waves coming, spilling out everywhere around that swimming pool. It was kind of crazy and scary. But here's the other scary part. During the following month, there were over 200 what's referred to as afterquakes, 2 or more on the Richter scale. So when you're experiencing these afterquakes in your head, you're thinking, is this going to get bigger and bigger? Is it going to be like that other one? Anyway, I would be sitting in a room sometimes, and it was as if, again, a giant was just shaking the entire room. And then the freakiest is you're walking along the sidewalk, and all of a sudden the sidewalk in front of you starts going like this. It's like, am I having an out-of-body experience? Because it was pretty crazy. And I've often thought, you know the term terra firma? It ain't. It's hard to describe an earthquake. And in 1974, I went to see a movie called Earthquake, because I wanted to see if they could replicate the sound that I heard during that earthquake. And I was disappointed, but not surprised, because it's hard for me to describe the sound, which was like rocks grinding against each other, and there was a low moaning sound that it vibrated through you and around everything that's surrounding you. The scriptures say the earth will moan. Well, I heard it moan. And I can honestly say it is the most frightening, eerie sound I've ever heard in my own entire life. So earthquakes can create sound below our ability to hear, but I suspect sounds cause vibrations, which I think sometimes we do feel, that I think makes us feel a little uncomfortable, unsettled, trying to figure it out. Seismic sensors have recorded what's referred to as infrasonic frequencies, meaning sounds below a human's capability to hear. Also during this time, I had a part-time job exercising horses, and a group of us noticed how nervous the horses were for a couple of weeks before the earthquake. And it confused us then, but afterwards I suspect that horses and other animals can hear and feel things we can't. So trust your animals. So what is the Ring of Fire? According to the National Geographic Society, the Ring of Fire is a tectonic belt of volcanoes and earthquakes. So back when scientists were noting on the map in the world all the events of earthquakes and volcanoes and stuff, they could see the outline of these tectonic plates. Well, the largest tectonic plate in the world is the Pacific plate. It is 40 million square miles. It is the world's largest tectonic plate, and get this, it is moving slowly northeast by 3 to 4 inches a year. No wonder there is so much activity going on in that area. So the Pacific plate is subducting, meaning that it is going beneath the northern part of Japan, which is on the Okhotsk plate. So it's subducting beneath the northern part of Japan. So Japan. Anyway, and this subducting is creating the Japan Trench and has caused earthquakes like the Tohoku earthquake in 2011 that registered 9.9 on the Richter scale. Sorry. There are lots of heartbreaking videos of that devastating event in Japan, and it's really hard to not only watch those, but see the power of the tsunami that hit as a result of that earthquake. The Ring of Fire surrounds the Pacific plate, which contains between 750 and 915 active or dormant volcanoes, according to one scientific study, which is about 2/3 of the world's total volcanoes. So what is a hot spot, and what has that got to do with the Hawaiian Islands? And it has nothing to do with cell phones. Join me next time as Granny goes down the rabbit hole of Plate Tectonics episode 4. Thank you for your time. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.